So hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Derrick Alridge, and I'm here with my colleagues and co-editors of The Black Intellectual Tradition, African American Thought in the 20th Century. And will introduce myself. I am a professor of educational history at the University of Virginia and director of the Center for Race and Public Education in the South. And we'll go around to Professors Bynum and Professor Stewart.
I'll defer. Dr. Stewart.
Good evening, everyone. I'm James Stewart. I'm Professor Emeritus at Penn State University, former national president of ASALH and past president of the Minnesota branch of ASALH. And I see some of my colleagues from Florida on the screen, so welcome all.
Yeah, great.
And my name is Cornelius Bynum. I'm an associate professor of history and director of African American Studies at Purdue University. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, great. So we got the idea of this book, Cornelius and I, back in 2014 when we were attending a ASALH conference, and we had a long conversation about the need for a book that would deal with Black thought in the 20th century. And we also said that this book should be, a book that consists of writings by historians, but we also wanted to make sure that we had scholars in there from African American studies or Africana studies, psychology, sociology, literature, etc. So we certainly wanted the book to be interdisciplinary. And so Neil, at the time, Cornelius had a relationship with the editor at Illinois, Dawn Durant, because his first book was published on Illinois, and we ended up having a meeting with her, and she expressed great interest in the book, and subsequently we developed a proposal, sent a proposal in, and the rest is history. So the genesis of the book was actually that conference in Memphis in 2014, and correct me, Neil, if I'm wrong. Eventually, though, we said we need to bring someone else on to work with us as an editor, and none other than Jim Stewart joined our team. And I have a long relationship with Professor Stewart. He was on my dissertation committee, and he's a longtime mentor of mine. So I'll turn it over to Cornelius and Jim and see if they want to add anything to that, and then we'll talk some about the contents of the book.
No, I think that's a very good, quick summary of the origins of the book. And of course, if you're going to be talking about sort of Black intellectual history, Black intellectual culture, it's hard to do that without, if you have access to Dr. Stewart, it's hard to do that without involving him in the project, given his, profound impact on the field of Black studies. So it was a great pleasure to have Dr. Stewart join us. Again, a mentor of mine, and someone whose work I respect greatly, and I've come to really respect as a person as well. So yeah, that's a terrific summary, Derrick. So I would leave it at that.
I was delighted when I was asked to become part of the team to put this together, because we really need to make sure that we understand the important intellectual currents that occurred in the 20th century to guide us as we move forward. What I've tried to do with my career is really to work with the next generation of scholar activists. As you can tell from my gray hair, I've got a few years on me, but I'm just delighted to have such younger colleagues who are really leading the way to help us to move forward. And I think this volume speaks to that potential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, colleagues. And I just want to talk some about the process of the book. It was definitely a long time in coming, and there were a lot of reasons for that. But we wanted to make sure that we included in this volume scholars, again, as I said, across disciplines, but also scholars at various stages in their career. So if you look in the book and you look at the contributor section at the back, you'll see that there are senior scholars in the book, as well as junior scholars, as well as mid-career scholars. So we wanted to have the book scan kind of that whole, area, that range of people in the profession. And we also want to make sure that we identify people who were doing good work, but maybe did not have, the name recognition as some of the superstars in Africana studies or history and other fields. And that paid off, I think, in dividends, because I believe that some of the strongest essays, all of them are strong in my honest opinion, but we really got very strong essays or articles or chapters from people who were just beginning to start their career, or who have not yet built a kind of national reputation. They're on the cusp of building the national reputation. And so that was a very strategic approach that I really think paid off.
Yeah. And if I could add on a sort of slightly different note, if you look at the contents, the table of contents, you'll see that we've broken the chapters up into various sections that deal with sort of broad themes. And the idea, at least from my perspective, the idea for that was to really show just how pervasive and all-encompassing the effort to create an intellectual tradition that was impactful in all of these different ways was, and that to really try to challenge any sort of pushback that there was a distinct, discernible, definable intellectual tradition. It's not just something that happens in arts and letters or in sermons, but it's also something that you see play out in specific ways in institutional life, cultural production, civic and social justice organizations and activism, politics. So, it really is an effort to try to paint this broad picture of a discernible, distinct Black intellectual tradition that touches all of these sorts of broad themes, broad categories, broad areas in Black studies.
Right. And a book like this, as much as we wanted to cover everything, we had to come to the realization that there were some areas that we were not able to cover and that we didn't cover. And one of the areas I think that we would have loved to have had a chapter on Black religion. Some of the chapters engage the issue of Black religion, but we don't have a standalone chapter on Black religion in the book. And that was something that didn't work out, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Are we going to take questions? Or
I think we can take some questions now from the audience about the book. And just so, I don't know if you all have seen it. This is the cover of the book.
I've got mine here too.
Yeah, yours is showing better. I think I have the hardback, so I'm getting a reflection. And today I wanted to know who did the photograph of the book, and I actually found the person who did the photographs, an African-American woman who's a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
She did the photograph. So,
awesome.
All right, so let's open it up. Unless you have something else you want to add, Professor Stewart.
I just wanted to add that one of the other considerations was that we clearly wanted to make sure that there was gender representation through the book, to make sure that we captured the important intellectual contributions of women who too often been overlooked.
No, that's a terrific point.
Definitely. So we're going to open it up now for Q&A.
You have to put your questions in the chat, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
One of the questions is how do you get the book?
I will put a link in chat for that. Give me 1 second.
And the title is up there as well. All right. Oh. Any questions?
why don't you indicate some of the chapter titles? Maybe?
Sure. So can you say a little bit about the content? We can do that. So I can walk through it all. So of course, Professors Bynum and Stewart and I wrote the introduction. The first section is titled Scholarship and Education, and it consists of a historiographical essay by Pero Dagbovic called African-American Intellectual History, the Past as a Porthole into the Present Future of the Field. Chapter 2 is Afrocentricity and Autobiography, Historiographical Interventions into Black Intellectual Traditions. And that was the Scholarship and Education section. The next section, we have it's called Arts and Letters, with a introduction written by philosopher Leonard Harris. First essay or chapter is Singing is Swinging, the Soul Force of 20th Century Black Protest Music by Jeffrey Lamar Coleman, who is a scholar of literature. We have the next chapter, The Post-Civil Rights Era and the Rise of Contemporary Novels of Slavery, written by Benitria Patton, also a scholar of literature. And Letters to Our Daughters, Black Women's Memoirs as Epistles of Human Rights, Healing, and Inner Peace by Stephanie Y. Evans, who is, of course, a historian and scholar of women's studies and Africana studies. Section Part 3, Introduction by Nikki Taylor, historian Nikki Taylor. And then Layli Mapian wrote a piece called Into Kapangma, and I probably misspelled that wrong. Probably pronounced that wrong, but Questing for the Roots of Womanism in West African Women's Social and Spiritual Formations. And Layli is a professor of Africana Studies. New Negro Messengers in Dixie, James Ivey, Thomas Dabney, and Black Cultural Criticism in the Post-War U.S. South, 1919 to 1930. Was written by my colleague here at UVA, historian Claudrina Harrell. Tackling the Talented Tenth, Black Greek Lettered Organizations and the Black New South, written by historian Maurice Hobson at Georgia State. And the last section is titled Identity and Ideology. And let me say the section before that was Social Activism in Institutions. So the last section is Identity and Ideology, with an introduction by R. Baxter Miller, who's at the University of Georgia, a literature scholar and Africana Studies scholar. First essay, chapter there, A New African Nation in the Western Hemisphere, Black Power, the Republic of New Africa and the Pursuit of Independence, by historian Edward Onachi. The 10th chapter, A Certain Bond Between Colored Peoples, Internationalism and the Black Intellectual Tradition, by historian Keisha N. Blaine. Next, Black Conservative Dissent, by historian Latasha B. Levy, who's also a scholar of Africana Studies. And last, Post-Racialism and Its Discontents, Barack Obama and the New American Dilemma, written by Africana Studies scholar Zebulon Molesky. And yeah, he wrote the last, and all of them are, in my opinion, are excellent chapters. And I hope you all will purchase the book.
Could I make one other quick note? It just occurred to me as you were going through the chapter titles and the authors that of all the contributors, not the sort of the section essays, but all of the body chapters are authored by members of ASALH, active members of ASALH, with maybe the exception of Benitria Patton, though she does come to ASALH occasionally, but I think she tends to be more on the NCBS end, the National Council of Black Studies end of things. But that was also very deliberate. Many of the contributors to the volume are people that the three of us have had long and meaningful intellectual relationships with, often through ASALH. I would point out that Latasha Levy and I went to undergrad together. So that's a long time ago. But I do think it's a really sort of neat aspect of the project that we were able to sort of synergize so many of our intellectual and professional relationships that have been nurtured by ASALH into this volume.
And I think one of the other features is that because of those relationships, it was easier to get the contributors to make the necessary changes to their manuscripts based upon the editorial comments that were received. I've been involved in a lot of editorial projects where that becomes very difficult to get people to cooperate with you.
Yeah, but you know, think about how many conversations we've had with some of these folks over the years about this topic. I mean, I can remember sitting in numerous bars with Derrick and Zebulon talking about post-racialism. And one of the formative moments of my ASALH experience was, do you remember in 08, Derrick, we were in Birmingham and we were sitting there watching the Obama-McCain debate, sitting in between Tim Black on one side and Manning Marable on the other.
Remember very well.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know who Tim Black is, he's still a long-time ASALH member, but a formative labor leader, a formative civil rights leader in Chicago. And when Obama wanted to run for state office in Illinois, one of the first persons he had to go talk to was Tim Black, because if he didn't get Tim Black's endorsement, he wasn't going to get any Black votes out of the South Side of Chicago. And then, of course, Manning Marable, the celebrated, political scientist and historian, and who just sort of gave such profound historical context to the debate. And I might add, his first job was in the political science department here at Purdue University. Not many people know that. So yeah, I'll just make a plug for my institution there.
Definitely. So, one of the things that I'm most proud of the book and about this book is the fact that we were really able to really execute in terms of making it interdisciplinary. And we were very serious about that. I know I've said that, in this conversation that we've had already, but we wanted to make sure that we had people from all fields and disciplines. And when I, just reading the contents just now, it reminded me of that I think we did accomplish that.
Yeah. And just to add to that, there've been some early reviews, and I think the thing that struck me most about the reviews is that the chapters that I thought were going to be the most hard-hitting and most impactful, they are those things, but there are other chapters that different readers have highlighted as being really, really meaningful to them, particularly the chapter by Dr. Stephanie Evans about sort of like mental wellness, mental health and wellness, and which is much of some of her research focus. But those are the chapters that for some people have been really impactful, because when we think about an intellectual tradition, a Black intellectual tradition, the names that come to the mind first and foremost are people like Du Bois and others, but we don't really think about the ways in which the strategies around preservation of physical and emotional health factor into that kind of tradition of defending or defining or preserving Black humanity, and so those were the chapters that some people have really pointed out in these early reviews as being really impactful to them. So yeah, I would just urge you to pay close attention to all of the chapters, because they offer something very different. But I think all of it is profound, quite honestly.
Yes.
I think I saw the message about 3 minutes ago that we had 5 more minutes. So
Yeah.
I think we're going to get cut off pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I just like to thank everybody for your interest in the book. And I think you really will find that it adds significantly to our understanding of our intellectual tradition and some of the issues that we're dealing with on a daily basis, as well as long term.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any last questions? I guess we might maybe have time for one more, but if we get cut off, just thank you all for being here.